body being it's an antenna that it is, you know, your bones are like, whether or not you believe they're hard and fascia or not, but they're the minerals, they're the golds, the silvers, the irons, the coppers, like we, you know, transmit and receive energy. And if we're thinking our thoughts, it's humming through our body. And yeah, the more you think about it, it just keeps coming in. It's like a satellite dish for a TV or something. Just like the programs just keep coming in, and you just... Do you think that men and women should train the same?
No, I don't.
Not at all, right? Like they should, like, seriously not train the same, like in any regard. Some exercises, like, I'd say women should just not do. Show that, you know, how big and great you think you are with all this testosterone running through you, that like you haven't cultivated anything, and you are a boy.
So what about Christ? Did Jesus exist in your opinion?
I think the whole thing of the Bible is a story of an internal alchemical process that our body goes through.
But yeah, the attracting chaos in my life, which I think I touched on yesterday. I made a little video on. Mitch taught me this. Like if I connect with you and you're a chaotic person, then that will ripple through the rest of my life. Yeah. And I think that would magnify.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Your ability to create is like huge, but then your resources that you're pulling from are chaos. So then you're trying to build this skyscraper, and you got like bamboo front foundations. It's like, man, that thing ain't gonna do anything.
So you have to be extremely careful when you're practicing that.
Yes.
Would you say?
Taking copious amounts of drugs and alcohol does affect the system just as much, but like that's an external. Sex is you. You know what I mean? You're not bringing something else into the equation. So I guess it's more like it's stronger. But there's been many journeys, you know, with drugs and alcohol and sex. Basically, like I guess that's the main sort of things that people go through. So yeah, lived experiences through all of those into their points of psychosis, essentially. So.
All right, welcome back to the Stillness Everyday podcast. Today I've got Jake Stone, and Jake Stone's from Chess Club. He's started what would you call it, functional movement gym? Or
yeah, we'll call it that for now, yeah. Functional movement gym, yeah.
We're going to go over a range of things, touch on religion and how it impacts us today, masculine, feminine energies, no doubt, and maybe talk a bit about how sex can impact you and have an impact on you if you're not... What's the word? Careful with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to start by explaining what you're doing at Chess Club?
Yeah, it's been a big journey. I had the vision of this back in 2017 when I was going through probably the craziest time of my life. Drugs, alcohol, partying. This is a local podcast, so a bunch of people listening to this might know fragments of my story. But yeah, I found myself in a wheelchair in 2017. Broken ankles, broken wrist, broken elbow, like borderline drug psychosis, like drinking all the time, and about to do another line of MD, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I've just done my trade, and now I'm broken and in a wheelchair, and this is not where I want to be. So I had this like crazy vision, wrote a mind map out about all the people that I want to work with. I actually got my sister to like birth the concept onto paper, and she did this whole mind map for me, and held that vision close, and went through my recovery. Had like a year period from 2017 to 2018. Going through lawsuits, had a car accident, had shoulder surgery, recovered from all the breaks that I was explaining before. So my body was completely broken. Like I was bent and twisted, and I couldn't use my limbs, and it was a nightmare. And so I found myself finding my feet again. Still holding this vision close. Like I started the honeymooners here. Yeah. So that was like my first little aspect of that. I was like, if I get a space and I put music in it and art, and I was like, people will come. And I just trusted in that. And I had the less is more sort of method with it. So I did less and got more. And we started introducing yoga and stuff like that, but it wasn't really a movement space. But when people are dancing, they're moving, and dance is like the ultimate form of exercise and expression. So it's funny enough, there was actually a gym right next door, the Jungle. I don't know if you remember that one.
In Nambour?
Yeah, right next door to the Honeymooners, where Soundbox is.
Oh, right.
So it was like Soundbox was the gym, and then the arcade place was Honeymooners. And,
I do remember now.
Yeah, so the concept like was energetically existing right in front of me, but it was interesting, just little things like that. And then obviously the COVID stuff came through, and then I sort of like was taking my holistic journey to another level, and, you know, becoming more and more sober over the years. You know, more practices started coming in. I started understanding, like we'll get into it later, like with religion and just ways of being. You know, I know you've gone down the Stoicism path and a few others, like
I suppose the Buddhist Vipassana. And
yeah, and you found that, you know, well, maybe this is too passive, or this is too much non-doing, and it's like we're not all meant to be monks, and you know that, like. Yep. You wouldn't be able to do the things that you do if you were just like monk mode. It's not going to happen, right? So yeah, time ticked through COVID. I think it was 2021. Yeah, 2021. I was like gonna go just full rogue warehouse movement gym. Not have any, like, I wouldn't have had any background work, like, you know, the bureaucracy behind owning a business, as you know. Found some trainers, and I was like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's just go hard. It was like kind of, you know, going to be like an underground, like, Bloods gym, like in the sense of, you know, we're not going to get shut down by COVID, like cops and all this stuff. So yeah, it was a bit of a dream. But then I bumped into my business partners that I'm with now, and we were just at a party, and I did write back in 2017 that I was going to have nurture be a part of my business. And not that I'm a vegan or anything, but I just noticed that they were like one of the only businesses that were like just trying, like just with some messages like that they were saying in their slogans. I'm like, all right, they're talking about consciousness and being aware of like food and things like that. It was like something to do with them. And that night at the party, a guy said he's like, I'm starting this thing called Chess Club, and I somehow just like jumped into his brain, and I knew what he was talking about. I was like, oh, you're talking about like the powers that be, you know, the forces of dark and light, like masculine and feminine. I was like, you're not going to teach people how to play chess. You're trying to like re-educate people. And then he's just like, how do you know what I'm talking about? And I was like, man, I think I've had the same dream, same vision. And I showed him my mind map, and he was like, well, I think this is our cue to start, right? And so it's like, it's pretty full on if you think about it. Like, I just walked into this nice house in Bocarino, and I was like, man, who lives here? Like, what's going on? And one thing led to another. And he was doing Qigong actually that day as well. Like, he was just standing there doing Qigong, and I had a bit of social anxiety, so I like smoked a little bit of doobie, like a bit of weed before this party, and I was watching him, and I was like, man, I don't know what he's doing, but it looks like he's directly connecting to the sun and grounding through the earth. And I was like, whatever this guy's doing, I need to know what it is. So all these little like things popped up around it. And
it's interesting to look back and connect the dots. You can't do it when you're obviously looking forward, but you can see how your mind created all of that, and it just kept appearing in front of you, and you kept taking actions towards it.
And the more I tried pushing it away, the like, you know, you'd get redirected. Sickness would come in. All these things. It's like, what are you doing? Like, it's you hold it close to you, and it just keeps unfolding. And like, yeah, he's I don't want to disclose too much about people's private business lives, but some of his businesses actually were in the mind map before he owned those businesses. I was like, I'd like to work with these people, and he was one of those people. So it's just one of those crazy things. And I mean, I like to put it down to the more like the body being it's an antenna that it is, you know, your bones are like, whether or not you believe they're hard and fascia or not, but they're the minerals, they're the golds, the silvers, the irons, the coppers, like we, you know, transmit and receive energy. And if we're thinking our thoughts, it's humming through our body. And yeah, the more you think about it, it just keeps coming in. It's like a satellite dish for a TV or something. It's like the programs just keep coming in, and you just keep learning from them. So if anyone can decipher that.
I understand what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying.
So what's actually going on at Chess Club?
So Chess Club is now, so it's gone from like rogue sort of like a Muay Thai MMA gym concept that I was like looking to partner up with like a trainer and stuff to being a high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dojo. So we have Rafael Miyashiro, who's multi-Australian open weight division gi no gi champ, so he's awesome. And then we've got Joel Sherwell, who's a local, like a lot of people in here would know Joel. Josh has been on the podcast, and they're doing great work trying to get their gentlemen's club up and running. And this is another thing, like all these men trying to do more, and they've actually got their own little subgroups happening as we all brought them in. So we had sort of like I'm going to say underground men's group thing during all this pandemic stuff, but we kind of did, and then Josh was doing the gentlemen's club. Anyway, segueing. So we've got Joel as our head mobility coach, and then we've got Tropicalia, like Brazilian dancing, and so we like it's all embodiment stuff. We've got pole and aerial, silks, but mostly it's working on the posture, the rehabilitation, the grounding. Grounding's a huge thing with it as well. We take a lot of Tai Chi, Qigong principles within everything that we're learning. So yeah, so we're offering just reconnecting people to their body, and if they've been training like a brick for the past 10 years, every chance they think like one, and you know how that goes.
So what's your bigger vision for Chess Club, like, and tying it into everything you embody? So
Chess Club, the biggest vision for it is it's like a ship, it's like a vessel that we're sailing into. There's a framework in which we operate, right? Where you have like Steiner education, we have like the private schools, the public schools, and it's like, I think the time it's up for that stuff. It's like, I go to a Catholic college. It's like, man, binding yourself to a Catholic college is binding yourself to absolutely all its atrocities and all its delusions. And even like those alternative schools, man, they're still sending kids out in the playground with SPF 50 sunscreen and like, what are you doing? Like you're integrating the kid and you're teaching him how to farm and all this, but you're sticking a big broad brim hat on them and covering them in sunscreen. It's like, do you not know the first thing about where energy comes from? Like, what are you doing? So there's like all these faults in it, and then they still have to follow the curriculum. So we want to try and sail this into a system that is and get acknowledged through it, and basically show that what we have is better than what they're offering. And I know that's like a big thing, because there's like, we're not here targeting maths and the English and stuff like that, but it's more like the physical side of things, and there needs to be more practices in school. And I just actually left Mountain Creek State High this morning. I'm like coordinating through their also like overseeing and helping out with their Cert 3 classes. So that's the year 11s and 12s. And to be honest, man, like the people in charge have openly said there's like we don't really know what we're doing. Like the curriculum's fallen through. Like,
but where do they get their curriculum from?
Exactly. Like, who are these people? Like, you see these health ministers of all these countries and you see what they look like. You can only imagine the bureaucrats behind the curriculum for our public schools. And it's all a top-down thing, right? Like, some of your teachers you look at and you're like, how are you alive?
So outside, so if you're talking about recreating a new system in one hand, but then you're also helping infiltrate the public system, do you actually feel like there's, you're better off getting into these schools and working from the inside out?
Yeah. It's like an integrative thing, right? We don't want to just abolish it, because the thing is the frameworks are amazing, right? Schools are awesome facilities. Like Chancellor High School is crazy. Like the sporting facilities that they have, and even Mountain Creek and like a lot of these big private schools, they got like amazing facilities. It's just what they're teaching in there is dated and old, and but I'm mostly focusing on the body work thing. So like what the kids are actually doing, and as far as I can see, they're just sitting all day long and covered in sunscreen. So
I had this thought a while ago about homeschooling, and what do you think about the 8 hours that you go to? Is it 8 hours we go to school?
I think it's 6. 6, is it? 6 like and a half.
9 to 3. Yeah, I used to go 8:30 to 3. So yeah, about 6.5.
6 hours. Yeah.
What do you think about that? Like as a system of daily going the same time, like so structured.
Well, this is why I believe they need to break it up with actual like practices, because you can learn so much. You can be so cognitive, and you can absorb so much information. But if you're limited in your physical expressions, it'll drive you mad. And it'll make you, like, you won't be multifaceted, which you need to be to accompany all that knowledge. And if it's not flowing properly through you, you can't, like... And we can measure this, right? We can say, oh, well, I'm so intellectual and I have $100 million in the bank. But it's like, I mean, that's good, but well, what are you doing with that money? Are you like, inciting change anywhere? Are you making something happen, or is it just for you? Is it just for, like, your family and what you're doing? Or are you just going to remain sick in your body?
Yep.
So... like there's so many people, so many different things that like they would all do with it, but so it's trying to bridge between the amount of stuff they're trying to ram into their head and how much they're limiting their movements and their health, and how much guidelines there is around it. Like to give you an idea, do you think that men and women should train the same?
No, I don't.
Not at all, right? Like they should like seriously not train the same, like in any regard. Some exercises like I'd say women should just not do. Like there's no real benefit unless you're trying to fortify like masculine like physique traits and stuff like that. And I dropped this on my first day going into the school. I was like trying to teach this young girl, I was like, you shouldn't try and mimic everything you're learning off Instagram and everything you're seeing the guys do. There's a whole system. You have a whole entire hormonal system, and like the teacher sort of looking at me like, "Fuck, we don't jump into that. We don't talk about this." And I'm like, and she's looking at me like, "Hang on, what?" And I'm like, "Man, like someone's got to be done about this, because if no one does it, that's just going to be like another 10 years will go by." And
so, give me an example of something that would affect a woman if they're trying to train like a man.
Well, like through their cycle, right? If they're going through like 4 different seasons, as it's acknowledged. If you have like, and I don't want to start mansplaining, so like women about their periods, but like if you're like coming into your period or like during it, you shouldn't be doing like heavy lifts, like especially core activation. And if you're doing exercises properly, your core should be engaged. It should be the point of like engagement, even when you're like moving your hands. So if you're putting so much load and pressure on something that is like, it needs to go through that stage and through that state, and the energy needs the blood, all like the water in your body, it needs to be here. It needs to be like cultivating this, because this is like generating your whole new cycle of hormones to flood your body, to regulate, like where you store fat, where you like how your body builds muscle, how you're metabolizing things, how your brain's working, like. And if that system's not on it, it's just it creates chaos, and there's a lot of chaos in both sides of the realm, the masculine and the feminine, and it's because we're stuck in these ideological cycles that just don't honor anyone, really. They're dated. I'm sure you're probably aware, the whole point of this podcast is to find stillness in every day of your life, which obviously one aspect of it is learning or your physical, your physicality day to day. So that's why I asked the question. So what like someone could take from it to, maybe change up their gym regime or something. Yeah, well, you could honor a week out of your month's training to, and like, this is another thing that we do, right? Someone came up with something and they called it breath work, and I was like, when did breath have to work? Why isn't it like breath just is, breath do, breath be, you know what I mean? Whether you like it or not, you shouldn't have to call it work. And this is how like fast spun out, I reckon, everyone is, and they're like breath work, and then everyone's a breath work champion, everyone's a breath work facilitator. It's like we're just funny, right? We just want to belong. We so badly want to belong and fit that niche. And look, I mean, some people out there are doing great things, but it's like we need to understand the etymology and the energy and what we're speaking and how we're trying to teach it and what we're communicating, because the phonetics and the discharge of the words that we speak is so important. Like, it's a whole nother rabbit hole we'll go into, but everyone just like attaches to these things, and I think they get lost in the meaning of it. So I'm not going to use the term breath work. I'm just going to like breathing, like specific breathing types and exercises and stuff like that, or just acknowledgements and intent, like where you can put the breath in the body, and knowing that like if you spent a week targeting like specific joints and systems in your body through breath, I mean, that's going to prep you for that next week of training so much. It's going to help you when you want to start building the strength and maybe like losing a bit of weight or whatever your goals are, right? So
would you say to kind of breathe into your root chakra if you were going through that part of your cycle?
Yeah, you definitely want to be sending a lot of energy into the deepest part of like your pelvic floor. Yeah, a lot of breath. But there's like
when you do this breathing, let's just touch on that, because when I do something like that, I'll focus my attention on the area and then breathe to it. And actually, I mean, I don't know if you can't actually breathe to the area, can you? But you're breathing the energy to the area.
I don't know. Hey, I feel like sometimes there's a little thing inflating, like, and I've only sort of gotten down to like my deepest like part of my core into like my pelvic floor, but sometimes I'm feeling an expansion of space, and that's taken years to like even develop in one area. And I know like before I used to go to bed when I was a kid, my mum would always tell me to like breathe into my toes and start there, and then feel when that expands and then work your way up, because you used to have trouble breathing from like, be scared of dying and stuff when I was a kid, so like, all sorts of traumas. But yeah, so I guess I've been practicing it for a while, but you eventually start to feel that expansion, and it's like it's like a little microcosmic expansion, but it's still felt. So yeah, like,
why were you scared of dying?
I was scared of dying. I think it's because my grandfather had a pretty horrific death on his he was like a all Australian cowboy out in the rural college in Northern Territory, and had a horrible death, and I think that just scarred me.
How old were you?
I was like 6.
Yeah, right, because I had a similar experience. It was my second cousin or something, but we were in Cyprus, and he died of cancer, but we were kind of real close with him for the few months we were living there. And I think that actually rippled down to, I didn't deal with it till I was like doing Vipassana.
Yeah,
I was super scared of death. I used to ask my grandparents, I'm like, you know, you're getting old, like, you scared of dying? Like, all those sort of questions when I was young. Yeah.
Man, I was having panic attacks. Like, I'd be laying in bed and, like, heart start beating like crazy, and I'd have to run to my mom, like, and I'm like, when am I going to die? It's just like, how do I explain this to a kid? So yeah, I mean, like, and that's another thing of saying, like, you know, you don't go tell a kid to go do some breath work if they're, like, freaking out. You're just like, what sensations are you feeling? Because they're going to try and conceptualize work and breathing. They're going to be like, what? And I think people I don't think they can understand it that well either. They'll just say it. So it's like, and then they think they have to do the work again, and then everyone's doing the work.
I heard a practitioner say that breath, I think I can't remember if it was a she or a he, but they explained it as, it is work, so you've got to, like, put in the effort now. And I actually, you know, I agreed with it. I was like, yeah, whatever, I understand it's work. But I've never looked at breathing as work. When I've done my breath work, it's it's almost the opposite.
Yeah. It's like you get to take a break.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's full smoker. You know what I'm saying.
That's interesting, because I haven't really thought much about it since. I just took their word for it and said, oh yeah, I guess breath work is work, because it's a lot of effort. But
and that's like saying, as soon as you're born, you had to work. I mean, maybe breath can be play as well, because when you're a baby and a kid, you got to play. You know, you're playing more than you're working. So is your breath working then?
I actually do play with breath, like when I'm, say, like inhaling and then exhaling at a certain speed, and then inhaling at a different speed, or holding. Like, it is play.
Yeah, 100%. And then you do a bit of grappling jiu-jitsu as well, and you know that, like, you really need to play with your breath then, and that's it's an objective way of measuring it too. So it's like, I think it's one of the things that you shouldn't be doing so much, like thinking that you're doing work with. You should just be like understanding it more. Yeah, anyway, let's touch on jiu-jitsu, because I feel like you get injured a lot there. Injured a lot?
Yeah.
Me?
No, not you, just in general at jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
so do you think that having all the other functional training would assist with it? Yeah,
so we do like FRC training, like Joel's an FRC certified coach, and I'm just doing all my functional pattern stuff, and this stuff is good. Like, it's all joint specific, gait pattern specific, all longevity. So we truly believe that we're building a system that they both statistically have proven to decrease injuries and prolong recovery rate, decrease recovery rates, and obviously blood flow. It's
increase your recovery rate.
Increase your recovery rate.
Decrease the time.
Decrease the time is what I was getting at. Yeah. So with all that sort of training, and like the people we're learning it off have done the work for us, and we thank them for that. Like, so, and we're just embodying it now. And I know with myself, like, I mean, I've gone from this shoulder, like, recurrent dislocation probably like 80 times, and then I ended up getting surgery. And and going from not being able to do anything, like I'd fall out of my sleep, to, competing in jiu-jitsu comps and, rolling with some of the toughest guys out on the coast. It's like, man, like, relative to my experience, that's huge. Like, that's massive. And not only that, like, significant strength. Like, it's a whole nother realm of strength. We've got, like, local people like Nick Tim on the sunny coast. Like, these people are just, like, just on another level of strength because of this joint-specific training. Yeah, right. And then that translates to your stability and your control and everything. The recovery is a big thing, especially for those people doing jiu-jitsu out there. You know that.
Just constantly injured.
Always sore, but this stuff makes you just like muscle dom soreness. If you're doing the joint work, then you should be pretty sweet. You're just going to be a bit bruised. I
want to go back to when you mentioned we were talking about Catholic schools
Yeah.
You said something about getting stuck into the system of, the good and bad from...
Yeah, well, I believe heavily in, like, you say things, you speak things. In some regards, you're energetically bound to those things. Like, that's why they still make you put your hand on the Bible in court and you're under oath. You are under some energetic spell, like whether you sort of like it or not. Like, you speak the thing, it becomes. And I actually recently went to the Freemasons. I'm going to get like a red dot on my head as I walk out here. I went to the Freemason place up in Yandina just because I was like, man, like, what is this? And he openly told me, he's like, yeah, every politician, all the people are all Freemasons. And I'm like, righto, well then, like, what is this? And they're like, we can't tell you, we'd love for you to join, but we have to hear it from you. So you have to show the interest. And that's the interesting thing I noticed. He's like, we won't say we would love to. He's like, you'd make a great Freemason, but I'm not telling you to join. You have to energetically say you want to and invest that time. And then when you do that, you got to do the ritual, you got to do the oath. And I'm sitting there going, I could lie through my teeth and like bullshit my way through that, and just to see what's like on the inside. I went and checked in with one of my business partners, and he was like, man, what you bind yourself to energetically is like way more powerful than you realize. So
100%.
You think about it in like these churches and stuff, they've got like these perfect geometric frequency resonating buildings, and they're chanting frequencies and hymns and songs, and it's just like instilling word after word. And they have their herbs and their sages and all the things that affect parts of the mind and open up receptors. It's like being on drugs and alcohol and going to the club and listening to Kesha and wondering why you behave like Kesha in our songs. It's probably more when we would have gone out back when we were like 18, but you know what I'm saying. It's like, what better way to brainwash somebody than to fill their head with wine and herbs and preach the fear of the devil into them. So it's like you're binding yourself into these narratives, and you're being like, they reckon like 95% of people, if you put a gun to their head, would start praying, even if they weren't religious. Like, it's because it's so, maybe not now, maybe now in the past like 10 years or so, these kids growing up with like Instagram as their god, like they'll probably just like throw their vape at you or something weird. So probably have a gun.
What do you think about the devil? Explain. What's your opinion on that?
I think the devil, it's like, it's all flipped. So they say Satan is like from the term Saturn, and Saturn is a symbology of like harvest. So the cycle of death and rebirth kind of thing. So it's also like through death and rebirth, you get to become bigger, stronger, wiser, and greater. So when you've built yourself up to be who you think you are and what you know, you have to embody the aspect of Satan or the Saturn or the cycle. So it's the etymology, which is like the understanding of the words that you're speaking, not just the devil is a red horn guy with a pitchfork. That's the devil that made generations that couldn't access much knowledge give the money and the taxes to the power be. That's the, if you don't do this, you're on your own and you're going to hell kind of thing. So, and then you ask like, can a soul burn? And it's like, no. Then it was like, well, why are you going to burn in hell? And then it's like, how do you, like, it's the whole, none of it checks out with itself. So the devil is, it's a representation of light and knowing. And I think it is just, the devil itself has just been stolen, because isn't devil backwards like lived?
Probably.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a lived experience. It's the flow of life. And then God would be like, God would be the knowing field. It's like, where do your thoughts come from, right? It's like, it's just relived experience and expressions of everyone else around you. Like, so maybe the knowing field is God, and the devil might be, the cycles in which we acknowledge and repeat through and grow from as well.
Do you believe we're all connected in some way?
Yeah. Well, we're all it's a magnetic electro realm, and we're like these beings that have charge. If we're all standing barefoot, we're all connected. And this is like when I started going down the rabbit hole of Tai Chi, and you watch all those videos and they're throwing people across the room like 10 meters, and you're like, whatever. And then you get thrown across the room, and all your energy and all your strength has been drained out of you in a split second. And you've got a 65 kilo, like 70-year-old dude just launching you. You're like, all right, something's happening here. And when he explains he's pulling the weight of you through the earth and pushing it back into you, you start to question, well, what's going on? How are you doing that? There's more. There's no characters. Like, there's no guy with a beard and guy with red horns. There's light energy, there's dark energy, there's like, I believe like evil and the devil never truly existed in the darkness. It was just created. It's just a story to spin us out of what is. We're kind of going across it.
So what about Christ?
Christ is
Did Jesus exist in your opinion?
I think the whole thing of the Bible is a story of an internal alchemical process that our body goes through. And it's whether it's bonding with the opposite sex, or it's like, again, acknowledging a lot of the information is left out for women. It's all very masculine based. So they say Christ is oil that's secreted in the mind, travels down in your nervous system into your solar plexus, into your endocrine, like your reproductive system. And they say it's like a secretion of oil. So Christos is anointed in Greek, isn't it? You're Greek.
Yeah,
so Christos is like...
It's Christos is around... what does it actually do now? But now I'm on the spot. It's at Easter. Christos and Esty is like Happy Easter.
Yeah, so you're saying that?
Yeah.
But Christos, it's like happy... I think it translates like happy, like anointing. So it's a ceremony, right?
I don't know what anointing means.
Anointing is like to coat something in oil.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
And I mean, like I could go down a rabbit hole with like this sort of stuff and all its meanings if we really want to. I can give a quick rundown. It's like we could agree that we live in a very masculine based society, right? Where it just honors that. You talk about this all the time. So you believe women shouldn't be stuck in this masculine work cycle because it just doesn't work. So the whole layer of our society is fabricated upon, especially Western, is Judean-Christian religious law. And it has been selectively put together to give powers a power, and that's generally groups of men. And so when you say Christ, it means to anoint. So like it's a phallic worship cult, then you could say that, right? So it's like a religious body text. All the feminine stuff's been stripped. It's only to suit men, so that you could say that is literally like phallic penis worship cult. And so the idea is to like anoint the penis for penetration to create life.
All right.
For the build up of sexual energy, the charge, the release. It's twisted, it's weird, it sounds creepy, but that's like the energy you're carrying when you're speaking these things, and people don't want to look at that when they're in the cult, right? They don't want to look at it. They want to just, and it's crazy how hijacked it gets, because they'll be the nicest family on the street, the beautiful people, but they're giving 20% of their paycheck to the church, and they're sold and then bought into this story. It's like, fuck, what's going on? And then Christ as well is representative of like, the oil that's secreting in your mind. And when you charge that oil and it drips down, you give it its intent, and then if you drink, it changes the viscosity of the oil, so it doesn't allow it to rise back up, and it stores and it stays down here.
Drink
like alcohol. So alcohol destroys the spirit, they say, energetically, but it actually changes the viscosity of oils. And so when this oil is produced and you're drinking and you're poisoning yourself and you're not honoring the cycles in which we have as like men and women, but this is specifically towards men, you destroy so sperm is life force to create life, right? And when you absorb it and you've created this alchemical process, you can make, the intent of sperm is baby life. So you can cultivate that intent within, and it'll fractal through your body, and you can like imprint a whole new layer of you through honoring this cycle. It's a whole thing. I've just like really been diving in the rabbit hole of like understanding how it all works, but it is true. It is anatomically real stuff. There's secreting oil that comes from, I believe it's the pineal gland, and
So having done 300 days of semen retention, how would that have affected my body?
So when you retain for that long through that many cycles, I believe it charges you up so much. And I know you yourself with like your ability for creation and all these things. Not everyone's the same, right? And you can't say everyone's equal, but so you've got powerful intent, powerful ability to create all these things. You therefore have the power to attract, and like, you know, it's more often than you hear it or not, people that retain this long, women that like even engage with them will experience orgasms and all sorts of things, and it's kind of like a phenomenon, really. But it's just the magnetic masculine energy, and you've charged it up so many times, and you're taking other people's, and not only are you taking it, you're absorbing it like into you. And I feel like you would have experienced some layers of chaos within this. Like, yes, you felt charged and strong, and I honor the fact that you're even able to do it. Like, it's pretty impressive. But I think it was a learning thing for you, and I don't believe you would necessarily routinely go back to doing it.
I don't know about that long. I would like to go. I think the 90 days is... Yeah. There's something about that, like a 90 to 150. Around that period, I noticed a lot, like my life, just the power to create, like you said, and the energy was just like, you couldn't explain it. But yeah, the attracting chaos in my life, which I think I touched on yesterday. I made a little video on the people that you have in your life and how Mitch taught me this. Like, if I connect with you and you're a chaotic person, then that will ripple through the rest of my life. Yeah. And I think that would magnify.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Your ability to create is like huge, but then your resources that you're pulling from are chaos. So then you're trying to build this skyscraper, and you got like bamboo front foundations. It's like, man, that thing ain't going to do anything.
So you have to be extremely careful when you're practicing that.
Yes.
Would you say?
Yeah. And then, so we've just spoken about the understanding and the foundations of something that can happen within the body. And so now we need to understand how important it is in the foundations of the words that we speak, because they carry that energy too. So if you have no understanding and foundational knowledge of the thing you're creating with your voice, what are you building and what are you buying into? And it's just something that's overlooked. And, you know, everyone's like, oh, English is a messed up language. It's only good for describing something that's, you know, flat and white and square and long, rather than like, you know, some Latin. I'm not saying Latin's like the answer, but there's a lot of lost languages, a lot of lost ancient Celtic language as well, where you have one phrase that encompasses an entire state of being and knowing. And it's stuff we just don't even know. We don't even know anymore. But what we can do is just be aware of what we're saying now and realize that it's quite the same thing. If you don't have an understanding of what you're speaking, then you probably don't have an understanding of a lot going on in your life.
I don't want to touch on this, but I think I've had this thought in the past as to how much our language has been, you know, like the English controlled the earth for a long time, Great Britain, and then it's like, how much did they manipulate the language they were then imprinting on the next colony to keep them in a state of, you know, like you're saying, if the language is basic and it influences your life, could they have used that? Like, it
creates
like a black magic sort of.
It's a dangerous echo chamber of vibrational frequencies bouncing around. So a lot of our words are like lots of like hisses, like s and a's and like ah and ooh, which is like quite a contrast of low vibrational language. And not saying that like, oh, high vibes only, like it's not that. It's like it's acknowledging the whole flow of it, because we need the deep resonance, but we also need the high frequencies to like to give a contrast, right? And color operates in this as well. When you speak, you're stimulating parts of the body. You're you know someone that's like so vibrant all the time, and they speak kind and they're empowering for others and all these things. You notice that they have like big bright eyes always. It's like the water molecules in their body are just constantly being charged. Obviously if they're doing other things to look after them. So I'm sure you could think of like a few people right now who are like, oh yeah, they're spitting good stuff always, and the whites of their eyes are as white as I've ever seen, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So we're all heavily influenced by sound frequencies. And I mean, we know this, like sound bowl therapy is like growing crazy, and ultraviolet light, it's like, it's all sound waves and light waves. So
it's true.
When we have this suppression of expression through the English language, we are just in this echo chamber vortex of it's just an echo chamber vortex of just perpetuating nothing. Like, I shouldn't say nothingness, because you can get your point across and you can say beautiful things, but you can also just be blindly saying lots of poisonous things. Like, for instance, breath work. Like, I'm so many people can be like, this guy's an idiot, but it's like, think about what you're saying. How many people say, oh, you know, if you're happy, you don't have to work a day in your life. And it's like,
well, that's true.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the semen retention. On the contrary, if you are someone who ejaculates every day, how does that then impact you as a magnet?
Well, you got to look at why, right? So you're seeking a dopamine release. You could have, it depends how old you are. It depends what you're doing. And like, I think we as humans always are coming back to that first thing of touch and connection. And if you're masturbating every day, I strongly recommend, and as Rod would agree, to stop doing that and find a substitute. And what's the first thing you can think of that like would make you more aware of what you're actually doing, and know the amount of energy used to keep creating that. Like, keep creating sperm and like whatever it is that you're doing and watching. And if you're watching porn and stuff like that, I mean, I'm sure, you know, we all know by now that like we can't be watching this stuff. We can't, it's not doing anything good for us. And if you are, I'd like for you to reach out. If you want to personally like know some more stuff, reach out, my Instagram or something like that, and we can just open up the conversation. Because
are you comfortable with making a comment about even just sleeping around?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will be honest, like through my journey, like I've, from the age of 14, like not understood. So I can't take full responsibility of like me poisoning myself. But, you know, I didn't understand the power and the magnetism that you have and how you're meant to honor it being a man, and in your sex life too, and how you are you set the stage for what happens, and you should be able to have the control of not just mindlessly sleeping and seeking that dopamine. And to be honest, a lot of it is, like I said, we're all coming back to that touch. We all want to be seen, heard, and loved. And if you're failing in other areas, in which a lot of young men are, you know, they're not truly seen and heard by their parents. They're hiding things from all sorts of different people in their life, and they're not free to express. Plus, they could be drinking, they could be smoking, they could be doing all these things, eating poorly. But yeah, so it all comes together in why like we do that. So I speak from my experience. Like everything I just said then is like when I was going through my worst, that's all the things that I was doing, and I wasn't honoring any part of it. And I was just looking like I either like take all these drugs to feel this feeling, or I can sleep with someone. And then I got to the point where I was like sober, and then the sex and the promiscuous part of me played up more and more, and it was taxing, man. It was not okay. It was really not okay. I destroyed myself. I was constantly giving myself to people and taking as well. Like, you know, knowing that like, you know, you're a man, you're magnetic in that feminine presence, and it's not right. It's not good.
Do you reckon that you connect with all those people energetically for like afterwards?
Me myself, like, I'm a caring sort of person by nature. So even if I know it's like some one night stand or something like that, so much of me actually genuinely cares about that person, but I have no instruction or no method to how to cater to the modern 20-something-year-old like PR woman, because there's no framework for them to operate. There's no right to womanhood. There's no right to manhood. We're just all operating out of this unconscious fear of like not being able to connect and not being able to receive love. So they're all sort of delusional parts of that. Yeah, but it in long and short, it did 100% damage me, but going through it, like, it made me so much more aware. And like hopefully one day I can just start teaching those who are interested. Well, not teaching, just showing, sharing, telling a story. But yeah, is there anything specifically?
I just had a weird flashback to to Glenfields.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a guy who you were telling, it was like you were telling me, like, it was, you were young, I think you were like 16. You were telling me some guy who's mates with your sister or something who'd slept with so many, like, it was, you were like, it was almost like you were bragging on his behalf.
Yeah. Yep, that's
which like, you probably looked up to, and then went and followed down that path. until you had to realize yourself?
Yeah, so I wouldn't have necessarily looked up to and thought maybe, oh, this guy's like cool as, but I would have, because I'm so disconnected from the magic and the chemical processes with sex. I was like, it's a fun thing that makes you feel fucking good. So I was like, it's like, if you're surfing, it's like, oh, my mate caught the best wave, kind of thing, or the most waves or something like that. It's sort of playing into that part of you where it's not meant to. It's meant to like be the grounding human experience part of you, not just some like fun thing that you get to like keep ticking off the list every night of the week or every weekend, however like deep you are in your sex addiction. So, yeah.
Sex addiction is probably, I think it's one of the bigger concerns because it's the most powerful energy you have. And if all of that energy is being directed into, like, all of your life, your whole life is getting directed into that.
It's getting directed into, like, as a man, into, like, depending on your sexual preference, but if you're heterosexual, like, you're also sleeping with probably a lot of women that are on hormone, like, blockers or whatever they're called, the pill. Yeah, so you're like, is that even a human operating system if it's got a controlled pharmaceutical thing? It's like, it changes women's sense of smell and there's like the desire that they have for the right man. There's studies about that. It can make them choose the absolute wrong person.
Well, there's a lot of, they come off the pill and they break up.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, so like I said before, we want practical advice for people listening. So what would you, Jake Stone, currently today, say to Jake going through this sexual addiction you had?
It's like all reduced back down to my promiscuous ways in my teens. It would be hard to talk to me, and it would be hard to try and tell me what to do. I mean, you knew me when I was younger too. It was like I was receptive to my mates and stuff like that, but something carrying like such truth and knowledge would be hard for me to like conceptualize, because I was just having a lived experience every day. I was not thinking about the future, not thinking about what things were. I would say, oh man, I wouldn't even be able to touch on it, to be honest, because I would try and show myself that there is more. I would just, honestly, I'd bring myself into like a martial arts gym or something like that, and just show that, how big and great you think you are with all this testosterone running through you, that like you haven't cultivated anything, and you are a boy and you need to cultivate it. So I think without, again, just ramming it into like their head, telling you what you need to do, maybe like I'd show them a practice and a path. And that's, now I've got this gym in this space. It's like, I've kind of just, this is the idea, I spent this morning with the kids at school, and I was just talking to this one student, this 16-year-old boy, this whole time, because he was injured, and just seeing where they're at, and I know that I had to instruct like the warm-up session, and even telling him to go through the warm-ups, like if you're not connecting with them, they don't want to know about it. If they don't see a purpose in it, they don't want to hear it from you. So I'm thinking, all right, I'll start to show what I can do, express like how I am, and then lead by example. Monkey see, monkey do.
I liked what you said. You said show a path. You didn't say show the path or the way. So it's like my way is not the highway. But I think trying different things, because there's a million different ways you can do it. And I agree, it's hard to tell. It would have been hard to tell me. Like my dad probably tried to tell me back in those days. Yeah,
imagine trying to tell us to
it's
stop doing all that shit that we're doing. Yeah.
But I think having been through that, you can now talk from experience. Whereas someone who's never been through a sexual addiction, sleeping with hundreds of women, it's like you can't just say that. I'm not saying if that's what, I don't know if you have or haven't, but if you haven't tried MDMA, it's hard to say don't do MDMA.
Exactly.
If you haven't drank alcohol and you've been a nun your whole life, it's hard to say stop drinking alcohol, it's bad for you.
Yes, I would say, the sex part isn't the only thing, but taking copious amounts of drugs and alcohol does affect the system just as much. But like that's an external. Sex is you. You know what I mean? You're not bringing something else into the equation. So I guess it's more, it gets stronger. But there's been many journeys, with drugs, with drugs and alcohol and sex, basically. Like I guess that's the main sort of things that most people go through. So I've lived experiences through all of those into their points of psychosis, essentially. So yeah, it is hard. It's hard to like say unless you unless you can truly relate from the pain. And I think some people can feel it too. Like, yeah, they can feel what you've gone through.
I think, sorry, I got lost thinking about the what I would say to my younger self. I think because I was thinking about there's a homeless guy who's been just doing some work for us. I mean, he's recovering from being homeless and an ice addict and stuff. But you see the people that come past him and kind of talk to him, and it's like, I've never been an ice addict, so it's pretty simple for me to say, not that I have said it, stop smoking crack. But it's like, you can't until, because one of my mates that was getting them to do the work, he's like, I've got this guy who'll be really good at looking after, these people, managing these crackheads, basically.
Yeah, right.
And he's like, because he's a crackhead himself.
Ex-crackhead or current?
He said he's a functioning crackhead, which I don't think is a thing.
Well,
but the fact that he can, I feel like you can relate to or the people can relate back to you. Like, those people wouldn't probably listen to me as much as he knows how to deal with their, you know what I'm getting at?
Tics and stuff like that, yeah. I've got a good primary school friend who was addicted to meth for like 5 years, and now he's been 5 years completely sober. And yeah, it's an interesting thing, that meth path. Hey, like, to talk from experience, you've lost your true sense of self in that experience, and you can always see it. You can always see there is an essence of like soul taken out of heavy meth abuse, because it does fry off the parts of the brain. And after like being connected to a few more people, like within like high up health industries and stuff like that, you do realize that there's actually a lot of, you say the word functioning methamphetamine use, like a lot of doctors, man, a lot of neuroscientists, neurologists, like, it's weird, it's strange, and then they're like, I've heard it come out of their mouths, and they're current practitioners of it, and you're like, all right, like, obviously in trust, I'm not going to drop names and stuff like that, but they're not the only ones. So it's an interesting realm.
Everyone's going through there. Like, just because you make it to a certain status in financial wealth, and by no means have you learnt all of this along the way.
No, 100%. And that's why I guess with everything we're doing, we're like, at least if one thing, have some intention in how you move and operate your body, and just come back to that. You could become the leader of the world, and just at least you can come back to you and know that like you're grounded and solid into you. Or you could be nothing and have nothing and still find the practice within you to make you, your heart still beats, life still goes, you can flow with it.
And I think you said earlier on the podcast, we'll wrap it up with this, when you make the money, what are you doing with it? And I think when you start to embody a conscious life throughout all aspects of it, it doesn't matter if you have money or not, but when you get that money, you'll be consciously spending it, and it'll be reflective of what's inside you.
Yeah.
So that's how you start to change the world.
Yeah, literally. It just needs one generation, because you can forget the world in one generation and you can change it in one generation. It's
optimistic.
Hey?
You're optimistic.
Yeah, it's like borders between what is it? Optimism and being a psychopath. Apparently, in medical studies, it's like if your dreams are so large and elaborate and huge, they'll start being like always showing psychopathic tendencies. When you're a kid, it's like the world is yours. Like, dream as big as you can, and you create anything you want, and you literally get labelled as a psychopath if that's what you start telling your therapist.
I think because everyone operates with such fear that they believe it's not possible. But there's people, obviously people have differing opinions of Elon Musk, but there's no doubt there's the creation, like the amount of companies that some people can create that most would say is impossible. So.
And most people wouldn't be able to operate under the layers of pressure that someone like that operates out of.
Yeah.
Like, to deal with millions and millions, billions of people knowing who you are, and maybe a billion of those people having negative thoughts towards you, that would be full on. Look at Elon's health, man. He looks pretty unhealthy. He's copping it. Yeah, a lot of people will sit there on their couch and say, whatever they want, right?
Yeah.
Say how they could handle it, but
Anyway, thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Cheers, bro.
It was a great conversation.
Was it?
I look forward to seeing where Chess Club goes in the future.
Yeah, hopefully we can get back here and go again.
Actually, wait, before we finish,
give
me your manifestation for 10 years, what you can see in Chess Club.
10 years.
Just so I can call you out in a few years.
Well, so 10 years, more facilities, facilities in most places, getting approved into curriculum and infrastructure, and bringing a whole new realm of like psychology, physiology, and philosophy into children's lives.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to understand the heart of masculinity, that's the generation of life, right? As in like creation of life, because doing is the masculine, right? And being created is a form of doing. And so if you're creating children into this new world with new thoughts, it's a whole process of doing. So like the most masculine thing you could do is to protect children, I guess. Protect in the sense of like give them the tools to become healthy and capable humans.
Right.
I don't know if that's an opinion. I'd believe that to be like energetically true, but correct me if I'm wrong.
It's true for you.
It's true for me.
So
it's true.
it's true.
Well,
all right.
No worries.
Thanks for coming on.
Cheers.